So James Stephens against Lisdowney, 12 points apiece, whereas Shamrocks of Ballyhale put up 230 against Tullerone's 212. I mean, the James Stephens one there, I couldn't actually quite believe it. I went to their Twitter account and I saw after 38 minutes, it was 11 points apiece between James Stephens and Lisdowney. The end of the game was 12 points apiece. What on earth happened there?
No, it doesn't look like that's possible. It looks like a mistake, or it should be 21 points apiece or something like that. But I just got confirmation there before we jumped on the call. I think the Village hit something like 30 wides. The guts of about 30 wides.
So that scoreline is right.
That scoreline is correct. 12 points
My
apiece.
God.
It just sounds, it's mad. Like it's definitely not a modern day hurling score anyway. The Village hit 30 wides. I think they hit 10 in a row at one stage in the second half. They were missing Niall Brazel and Conor Brown, so they were already through. So the result don't think mattered, too much. It wasn't a knockout game or whatever, but it's hard to believe that they only shared 24 points between them, particularly when they shared 22 in 38 minutes and then couldn't score for the last, or could barely score for the last 22.
Like, what on earth happened there? I presume Conor Brown is still out for James Stephens. He had that hamstring injury, so yeah, he must be still out. But to put up 12 points over the course of a game, it just must have turned into a bruiser. And you know the way, like a lot of the time, a great game is when both teams are scoring and it's tit for tat and it keeps going and going and going. But like the life is normally sucked out of a game when there's a load of bad wides. That must have been a terrible spectacle. If anyone was there, let us know what you thought of it.
Yeah, sometimes when things are going wrong, not just for one team, but for two teams, it can just kind of have a rot can kind of set in. Sometimes teams take each other to another level. Sometimes teams can also take each other to another level, as in a bad level, when the standard drops, start hitting wides, start missing frees, stupid things start happening. And that's clearly what happened there.
Yeah, Shamrocks are back in form though, 230. They'd lost their first couple of games. Now, we know what the situation in the Kilkenny Championship, that in the league, you can still find a way back into it, and Shamrocks have done this before, so it's probably no big deal to them. In Group B, you have James Stephens top of that. They have 5 points from 3 games. Bennett's Bridge, they're through because of the Ballyhale result. Tullerone then are next on 3 points. Shamrocks there on 2 points. So, but Adrian Mullen, I think he got injured, didn't he, before the game?
Yeah, he seems to have a hand injury. He was out, and his brothers Darren and Paddy were out as well. So very impressive performance to clock up 230, and it was 220 to 7 points to Shamrocks at half time, having played with a big breeze, but I believe they were very ruthless. They left a couple of scores behind, but like 220 and a half is serious, especially when you're missing those players that we said there. I believe Tullerone were trying to work the ball out of defence a lot, work it shorter, and they were just getting turned over an awful lot. But it kind of reminds me maybe a bit of Limerick producing that really strong first half against Cork in the league, having been poor up until that point. And you'd imagine that this would be a bit of a turning point for them. It looks like Adrian Mullen will be out for a bit, but Darren and Paddy Mullen are expected back soon enough, I believe. So they're going to have even more bodies on show now over the next while. And they only want to be starting to motor around now or over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, because they've won so much over the last number of years, well, to be honest, throughout their history, there's never going to be any panic there. Once they all know it's about peaking for a certain time. Other counties or clubs probably feel like we need to hit their own ground running, we need to win the first few games just to get the belief going. Ballyhale, they have this implicit belief because of the quality and because of their history and all that kind of stuff. So just timing it, and you actually can just go, we'll time it right. And even if that's right or wrong, generally it comes right when you have that quality and the attitude is right.
They've done it before, so there's a belief that they can do it again, and they've obviously haven't panicked before, so there's a belief again that they won't panic this time. So it's we were kind of like that in Burr for a while. When I came in around the scene, you mightn't have been going that well, but there was always a confidence. Like you had, Brian Wheelat and Joe Erity, the Pilkingtons, these lads around the dressing room, they had been there, worn the t-shirt several times. So there's always the confidence that you're going to be able to come right. Like they mightn't say it outwardly, but you're like, we need to be right for the first weekend in September, or around. We need to be right for the quarterfinals, and that's when you'd see things up in a gear in training. You'd see more smacks in training. You'd see no one getting anything handy in training. You'd see just everything would raise a gear, and I'd imagine it's the same in a place like Ballyhale, where success is has been so intrinsic for them over the last 10 to 15 years and even going further back than that.
I see plenty of lads comments in here talking about is the Kilkenny standard ahead of the Limerick club standard? Like, what is the highest quality club championship going on out there at the moment? People would have said Galway for a number of years with all the county titles, all the club All-Irelands that they were hoovering up. But of course, they didn't have to go through a provincial championship for a long time. So if you're in an All-Ireland semi-final, if you have a county in an All-Ireland semi-final every single year, you should be hoovering up more All-Ireland titles, to be fair. But just a comment in here from ML89. One club All-Ireland out of Limerick. So while county team is going unbelievably well, the club championship is still a long way off being comparable to Kilkenny. What do you think?
It's a difficult one because is Ballyhale winning a load of All-Irelands? Does that make Kilkenny the best club championship, or does that make Ballyhale a team that are a nice bit ahead of other teams? Like they hammered Dixborough in the county final last year. They obviously had a real tough game against the Village in the semi-final, but because they're going winning All-Irelands, does that make that the best championship, or is the best championship a championship where you could throw a blanket over the 8 teams and you have different winners in a different year? It's difficult. If we're talking about quality, you'd probably outside of Ballyhale, like the Village won All-Irelands in the mid-noughties. Yeah. Outside of Ballyhale, what other Kilkenny team has won an All-Ireland since the turn of the millennium? Obviously, taking out that Village team. Is there another one? I'm
trying to think. Did O'Loughlin's do it, or did they lose the final to Clarenbridge? I think they lost the final.
O'Loughlin's lost the final, yeah. In fairness, they've probably had Kilkenny have probably had a decent whack of Leinster winning teams during that time. As you say, O'Loughlin's, the Village won it a couple of times. They were beaten by Portumna in the semi-final. Ballyhale have won it an awful lot of times too. So if you're looking if you're looking at it over the last, I would say 20 years, you probably would be saying Kilkenny and Leinster anyway. In Munster, we'd know Tipperary All-Ireland finalists before Borris-Lee. When was the last Tipperary All-Ireland club winner?
Toom, 87 Borris-Lee, and then Toom were in the final. And Toom should have really won an All-Ireland at some stage. I'm sure that's something that they think locally, and they probably should with the quality they had. But actually, do you know what? You're making me think a bit more about, that in terms of Shamrocks have been dominating largely in the last few years. In Tipperary, Thurles Sarsfields, who probably feel that they should have won an All-Ireland, given the quality that they had. They had been dominating Tipperary, just battering teams for a long time. But the last 4 years in a row, there's been different winners in Tipperary, which is probably a good thing. Like if you were to ask me who will win the Tipperary Championship this year, I couldn't really tell you. The final group games will be on this weekend, and I think the game that probably jumps out ahead of the rest because of it's a winner takes all will be Nina against Borris-Lee. But Killadanga could win it. Will Killerwan finally make the breakthrough? Or SARS coming back? There's a couple other teams you could probably throw into that. And here's a question from Shane Power. Shane and Michael, interesting question for you to debate. Are Ballygunner the most underachieving hurling club team of all time? Definitely should have won an All-Ireland by now. But I mean, I would put Thurles probably in a similar enough bracket in terms of unbelievable, outstanding talent. There probably should have been a club All-Ireland in there, shouldn't there?
Thurles' big opportunity was when Kilcormac beat them in that semi-final. Kilcormac were rare and underdogs going in that day. Ballygunner, Ballygunner probably would have. Their chance was probably when Borris-Lee beat them in that Munster final, I would say, because they were red hot favourites going into that game, and they're
left a few games against Na Piarsaigh. They had brilliant battles with Ballyhale, with Na Piarsaigh, and once or twice you were like, geez, they have this game now, and then they didn't. Yeah,
I think they beat Ballyhale. Ballyhale beat them after extra time one day in an epic.
I think after extra time. Yeah.
They're on a massive run, but when your goal at the start of each year is to win an All-Ireland club title, and you haven't been to an All-Ireland club final, you'd probably say, with the talent that they have available to them, you'd probably say that they are underachieving. We talked about some other maybe underachieving clubs, but that's within looking at county title success. When you have a team that's so talent laden as they are, you would be thinking that they'd have an All-Ireland at this stage, and they don't. And they haven't, aside from winning that Munster and being beaten by Ballyhale in the All-Ireland semi-final, it's not as if they've been right there. They've been close-ish, but they haven't been able to complete the job. And I'm sure this year, that's the only thing that's in their mind this year, realistically.
Yeah, and it's actually interesting because it reminds me of, the situation with Oulart. And I see Sheikh Barabbas, Barry Cleary, he was tweeting about the past 10 years of official Wexford Senior Hurling Championship started out with Oulart dominance, but ended in their relegation. Oulart won 10 more senior games than any other team in that spell. And of course, they have gone down. And a lot of people would have thought they would have done more than they ultimately won that Leinster club in 2015, but didn't go too much further.
Yeah, they would have. I was actually only chatting to an Oulart man about this yesterday down in Wexford. They would have felt that they left that All-Ireland club semi-final against the Piershig behind. Remember, they were beaten after extra time, and they were flying it. And then the Piershig went on and won the All-Ireland. But just back to the initial question, like if I'm from Borough and I'm thinking, I want to get 7 or 8 really good challenge matches, and we just say we want them all from clubs that are in the same county, I'd be looking at playing probably Galway, Thomas's, Turlockmore, Castlegar, Capitagal, etc. Probably be going to Kilkenny, Dixborough, Ballyhale, James Stephens, O'Loughlin Gales. Probably be going to Tipperary, Bursalee, Killadangan, Turles Sars. Would it be going much further field? Would it be going to Dublin? It's probably 2 or 3 really, really competitive teams. Limerick, you'd have probably Doon, the Piershig, and Kilmallock, but though I'd probably, off the top of my head, Patrick's Well. I'd probably be looking at Galway, Kilkenny, Tip, and like that's their poles apart in many ways, because said Tip haven't had a lot of success at club level, but there's a lot of teams at a really good level. Galway have a lot of teams at a really good level as well. Kilkenny have a lot of teams at a good level, and one team at a particularly high level. Yeah,
well, there's a question for people out there: is a club championship? Do you measure the strength of a club championship by the competitiveness between the clubs there, or by the best team, i.e. the Ballyhale or Coola when we won a couple of All-Ireland titles or whatever? Is that the way you judge it? Because like outside of Coola, no Dublin team has even won Leinster since Crumlin in 1978. So I mean, other teams probably had the quality but didn't do it.
Is a competitive club championship? You have 5 or 6 teams every year, and you don't know which one of them is going to win it, or you have a Ballyhale where you're thinking, if they win the county title, they're going to win the All-Ireland. So it's that's an interesting kind of question.
Yeah. Will says, if St. Anne's had won on the weekend, it would have been the 2nd county title for Redmond Barry in 21 years. Who are the players at county level with the longest gaps between All-Irelands? If anyone has the answer to that, please throw it in. 13 titles each for Galway and Kilkenny, and Limerick were lucky just to win the one against the Carlow champions, says Bazzaroni. Against the Carlow champions.
Was that? I don't think they beat I don't think they beat Mount Leinster in the final.
No, Portumna
beat them. Yeah, they beat Cushion. Was it Cushendall? They beat in the final. In 70, not 17. It was 16? the year before. The year before. You won your first one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Toomevara and Thurles over the last few decades would run them close. I'm not sure who you're referring to there. Glenmore being mentioned. Shamrocks won very easy without the 3 Mullins, Adrian, Darren and Patrick. Definitely would have to agree with Thurles. Some serious talent in both Gunners and Stars teams over the past 5 years. Like the Munster, do you think the Munster club or the Leinster club has been more entertaining to watch over the years?
Probably Munster club, I'd have to say, if I was looking back at games that I can really remember. Some great Newtown Chandron games, Newtown and Ballygunner actually. I had a clip up there not too long ago about local commentary for a Ballygunner and Newtown Chandron game where someone got an awful stroke, an absolutely brutal stroke, and the local commentator tried to say that he was going for the ball or whatever. But there's some great games there that I can remember in Munster down through the years. In Leinster, see, I have the Borough kind of tinted glasses when I look back at any of the Leinster matches. They're the ones I remember most, like Borough and Castletown, and Stephen Brown getting one of the best goals that I've ever seen. I think it was in 01. There's not that many other really memorable Leinster Championship matches that stand out to me, though. Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, a lot of times the All-Ireland semi-finals are unbelievable. Obviously, to mention the Ulster Championship too, there's been some great games up there. Shane Power says, also lads, would you change the club championship structure after the county finals? Instead of having Munster teams against each other, hold an open draw with all 4 provinces involved. I would like to see it structured. We're denied so many brilliant games that wouldn't you love to see more of these Munster teams against more of these Leinster teams, and obviously the Ulster and the Galway teams having to come through against all the different areas too. I think it's a bit of a wasted opportunity, but you don't want to get rid of the Munster and Leinster, but it does feel like a missed opportunity.
I have an idea. What was that farce that was proposed earlier on in the year? All the super clubs within Europe going basically making their own Champions League. Imagine like Ballyhale and Borrisalee, and we'll just say Thomas's and Patrick's Well and a few more, and a Piercing just went and created this rogue thing and didn't play in their county championship anymore.
Who'd look after the insurance?
Yeah, exactly.
That might be your biggest stumbling block. Do you know what? We are going to do a club power rankings sooner rather than later.
Oh, that's going to be an absolute mess.
If you enjoyed this piece of content, please follow us on YouTube by hitting the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner of the page, which helps the channel grow. And if you want audio podcasts, go to patreon.com/ourgame.